everybody, it's Femtrooper, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 5 consoles. I started thinking about all the consoles I owned, all the consoles I've played, and which ones stood out the most to me. Some really obvious, others not so much. So I decided I wanted to do a list showing my favorite consoles of all time. So let's go. Coming in at number 5 is one that might surprise people, and that is the Sega Game Gear. No, I'm just joking. I don't know. I had to show it because the Sega Game Gear, I think, was either my first or second console, and I really didn't like it that much. So let's actually get into it. At number 5 is a handheld console. I really love it. It's great. It has kind of everything going for it, and it's really too bad that not a lot of people bought it because I think it was great. And that is the PlayStation Vita. It's fantastic. This is a really great little console that I still use to this day. I love it. I think the screen is great. I really actually like the way it feels. It's comfortable. It's a sleek little thing. I mean, come on. The Vita is great. It's just a huge missed opportunity from Sony, in my opinion, because although I love Nintendo handhelds, I love the Vita. It's great. And I will admit, I kind of missed out on the PSP. Never bought one. And then when the Vita came out, I was so hyped that I absolutely fell in love with it. It's great. Now, a huge reason that I love the Vita is the game selection. And I will point that out right away here, guys. A huge reason why I love various consoles. It's not just because of the look or the way it plays or feels. It's the game selection. That's why we all play games. It's the games. So Vita is awesome. It's got a lot of visual novels. It's got action adventure games. It's got shooters. I mean, it's a Sony console, so there are a lot of AAA kind of PlayStation type titles that were on it, and I think that's really cool. Like, for example, there's an Uncharted game on it. That's really neat to have handheld. I think so. And then besides that, you got, you know, very obscure and strange RPGs, and also strange point and click visual novel type games. Danganronpa is my biggest example. My God. It's one of my favorite series of all time. All 4 of them I love, even Ultra Despair Girls. I absolutely love Danganronpa. It's fantastic, and I played every single one of them on the Vita, and I just had a blast. The Vita is what introduced me to Persona 4. Persona 4 Golden was on the Vita, and actually that's how I bought it. I bought it with Persona 4. I was so hyped to play that because that was my first Persona game, and what an experience that was. It was so cool. And also the eShop. You could get PlayStation Greatest Hits titles. You could get PSP titles. I got Final Fantasy IV for the Vita. The PSP version was on there on the eShop, and it is phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. Love that game. It's probably one of my favorite Final Fantasies, if not my favorite. It depends on the day, but I love Final Fantasy IV, so I played that on there. You could download all sorts of great games on the Vita. It was kind of like this, before the Switch, it was kind of like your way to play a lot of these older titles that weren't ported yet, which many have been to the Switch, but at the time it was like, oh, cool, you can, you know, get these great JRPG classics, play them on the Switch. It's how I played Final Fantasy VI, actually. I played the PS1 version, which I know many people are like, ugh, but I actually really enjoyed it. It's how I played Final Fantasy VI, and I had a really great time. There are rhythm games on the Vita. Hatsune Miku, Project Diva F, have that, and Persona 4, you know, Dancing All Night. Oh my God, such a great game. I had so much fun. So yeah, I love the Vita. I think it's a great console. I love handhelds. I'm partial to them. I think handhelds are probably the best in that regard, and you get a lot of titles. Now, I will say it does sit at number 5 because I do think other consoles have more of a selection, have more memories with me, but the Vita does hold a special place in my heart. I really do think it's a great console, and I still use it to this day. So, long live the Vita. Let's get to number 4, and that is another handheld console, and one that, in my opinion, is just a machine. It's just a master. It's got everything on it, and not only is it great for its own games, you can play the console before it. You can play all of those games on there too. So what is it? That is the Nintendo 3DS. Oh my God, what a great console, because you can play all the DS games on it. I still play my 3DS. I love it because I think it has a great selection. The DS had a phenomenal selection, and yes, the DS is great, but because the 3DS had so many games and can play the DS, I'm going to go with the 3DS on this one. And this is the 3DS XL. I think I've got a few 3DSs on our shelf here, but this is my favorite one because it's my cool Yoshi 3DS and I really like it. But this is a wonderful system, and although I didn't use the 3D so much, some games that did come with the 3D feature were used in a very creative way, like Super Mario 3D Land. Very cool game. You had to have the 3D on for it, but it was really well worth it and a really cool game. Tons of JRPGs on the system. In fact, tons I missed out on. The 3DS was really popular when I started this channel, and I, at the time, was buying a lot of games because I was so hyped, and I was like, oh, I gotta have pickups videos and all that stuff. So I do have a lot of games in my 3DS collection that I haven't actually played yet, but I'm slowly working on it. I just beat, as everyone knows, Dragon Quest VIII on the 3DS. Fantastic, and I can't wait to play Dragon Quest VII, which I will be playing on this. It's awesome. And there are great platformers on the system. There are wonderful rhythm games. My goodness, Theater Rhythm, Curtain Call. Oh my god, what a great game. I have both Theater Rhythms, but Curtain Call was the definitive version. And while Final Barline on the Switch may be a better overall game in terms of selection, Curtain Call is great because you use the stylus. It's a different type of play style. So yeah, I actually still do like it, still would keep playing it. Lots of Pokemon games came out on the 3DS. Tons. And at the time, wow, there were just so many. Pokemon Moon and Sun, those iterations of Pokemon, I loved them. They changed things up in a way that spoke to me. Absolutely love them, but there's X and Y, Omega, Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, so many great games. It was awesome. I absolutely love Zero Escape, Virtue's Last Reward. Some great visual novels on there too. I mean, the 3DS is great because it's Nintendo, so you're getting all those franchises like, Mario and Zelda. A Link Between Worlds, come on, what an excellent game. I mean, it's actually my favorite Zelda game, if I'm being honest. Link Between Worlds is my favorite, and I fell in love with that game. I just love top-down Zelda, and that one is genius. It's such a great one. But you get all those titles, but then you get a lot of other niche, strange titles. I mean, I've got games that I really want to check out that I haven't played yet, like Stella Glow and Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor Overclocked. I still haven't got to that, but I want to, so trust me, there's games in my 3DS collection that I am pumped to play. I'm so excited, and games that I do own that I think are wonderful. Like, there's different Mario parties, Mario tennis games, Mario Kart, there's all that stuff, and JRPGs, visual novels, platformers, you name it. It's got everything. It's wonderful. And in terms of the actual console itself, I mean, the two screens, this is great. I love it. It's a really nice looking console. I like the screen. The Vita screen is probably better, obviously, but you get the two screens. You still got the stylus feature. I love it. It's a really great console, and I'm sorry, but Nintendo never fails with their handhelds. They are always fantastic, and that's why the 3DS is on my list. The next console on my list is the first one that is an actual console that hooks up to your TV, not a handheld, and that would be the PlayStation 4. Now, I wasn't sure if I was gonna pick the PlayStation 4 or not, or the PlayStation 5. The reason I say that is because the PlayStation 5 plays all new games, PS5 games, and PS4. So I kind of thought I should just pick PS5. But because it just came out and I just got it, it wouldn't be right to put it on the list because I literally haven't played that many games for it. So let's stick with PS4 for now, and then maybe PS5 as we get into the, life of it a bit more. So why PS4? Well, it's my favorite. It's my favorite Sony console in terms of an actual console. It's great. I mean, the PlayStation 4 had everything. I love my PlayStation 4. I mean, man, oh man, you've got so many games on there. You've got your Uncharted games, you've got Sakura Wars, all the Yakuza games. I mean, they're my favorite, like one of my favorite series of all time. You have, Final Fantasies on there. Final Fantasy VII Remake was on there. I'm not a 15 fan, but 7 Remake was on there, and it's mind-blowing. It's one of the best games ever. You got Blue Reflection. That's great. You got all sorts of fun games like Spider-Man, Until Dawn, The Last of Us, both parts, right? I mean, it's a It's a wonderful console. It's my favorite. Out of all the Sony consoles that I've ever played, it's got the most games that I like on it, and it's a really sleek looking console. I like the look of it, I'll be honest. I think it's great. I do think the PS2 was pretty sweet in terms of looks. I think it looks awesome. But the PS4 looks really great too. Game-wise, the PS4, fantastic. Now, I love the PS5, don't get me wrong. I don't really love the look of it. It's kind of a big monstrosity, so points down for that. So yeah, I'm going to go with the PS4 for now, but the PS5 will overtake because it does play PS4 games. So, you know, in that regard, kind of like the way I love the 3DS, I'd probably pick that. But PS4, I mean, I've got so many PS4 games. I've had so much fun with it. It's fantastic. I've played so many great games from different genres on it. I mean, JRPGs, you know, brawlers like Yakuza. I love my Yakuza, okay? And it's just a fantastic console. So I'm really hyped on it. I really like it, and there are so many interesting games for it that I'm just so excited to still play that I haven't, like Judgment, Last of Us Part 2. I haven't played that yet, so I do have games in here that I'm really pumped to check out. But oh my goodness, I mean, Persona 5 Royal, I mean, that's a fantastic game, and I know it has a PS3 version, but who even thinks about that? That's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. As you can see, the PS4 is a great console for many reasons, because you could have a PS4 and just play shooters and action games and have a great time. You could have a PS4 just for JRPGs and have a great time. So, I mean, it's got it all, kind of. It's got everything. It's part of this cycle of gaming that we're in right now where you know, there's a million games being released physically and digitally, and it's just a really great time. So the PS4, yeah, it wins for me. It wins for me for Sony consoles. It's just great. We are getting to the top 2, and this one was hard because the next console I'm about to talk about was actually my favorite console for years. Anytime you'd ask me 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, what's your favorite console, Paige? I would say the Super Nintendo. Always. In my heart. It's probably still my favorite in that regard in terms of nostalgia, but it is not my favorite console anymore, and I will explain why in a sec. The Super Nintendo was my first console. As far as I remember, it may have been the Game Gear. I don't remember. I was so little, so we're just gonna go with Super Nintendo. But this is my original Super Nintendo, and I don't know why, but I put like some weird Cocker Spaniel sticker on it when I was a little kid. We never even had a Cocker Spaniel, nor was I like a Cocker Spaniel fan, so I'm not sure what that is, but I can't take the sticker off now because it's been on there since I'm a kid, and now it's just part of the console. So I will keep it. This is my little Super Nintendo here, and it's not yellowed. I have a pretty nice one, I think, and it still works. I got it in, I believe, 1994, and it made me love gaming. It made me love video games, made me a gamer, and it made me love JRPGs. So let's talk about that. The Super Nintendo was the console that I experienced Earthbound on. And my God, clearly my favorite game of all time, and I would rent it all the time. And there's so many other classics that I love on that console. Super Mario RPG, another one that, I mean, I'm so excited for the new one, but the original, it's a fantastic game. There are other great classics on it that I didn't necessarily experience, like Final Fantasy IV, Final Fantasy VI, and I've played them since now, well, on my Vita. But I played, you know, all, like, Super Mario World, and Super Mario All-Stars, Super Mario World 2, and, you know, weird stuff like Claymates and Stunt Race FX and strange, bizarre games like that. And I rented zillions of Super Nintendo games. This was part of the, you know, the era where you would rent games a ton, and that's exactly what I did. I would have a new rental every week. Huge part of my childhood was going to rent games, and yeah, I did own some, obviously, but I would rent games constantly renting, and what a fun experience that was every week to try something new. Sometimes it was something really good and memorable. Sometimes it wasn't that great. I mean, there are so many experiences I have with the console. Just sitting and playing Mario Paint all day. I mean, that's a great game in its own right. Strange, but it's a really good time. Some of my favorite games of all time, Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3. They're all amazing. I love 3 a lot because I played that like a ton, but I love the first two, and there will be nothing like the original. I remember playing it, like the opening screen, just seeing it. there's something about it that is magical. So, I mean, the console is great. I also have a reproduction cart of Sailor Moon Another Story, a strange game that never came out here, but it's a JRPG. It's really cool. So the Super Nintendo, man, it really does hold a special place in my heart because it's the first console I ever played. F-Zero, the first game I ever played. I remember putting it into the console when I got it, and I mean, the rest is history. Now I love video games, and that's why. It's because of that little console right there. Now, the reason it doesn't sit at number 1 is because when I look at all my favorite games from it, there aren't as many. And part of that is just because, A, not as many games came out, but also back then, I didn't get a million games all the time. Like, now as an adult, and I can just buy games whenever I want, but back then it was like maybe you got a game at Christmas and maybe a game on your birthday. It was a big deal to get a game at Christmas time. Wow. But, you know, so I didn't play as many, and I didn't play the same, like, over and over, so I don't have, like, if I were to list off, like, my top games, it wouldn't actually be as big as the next console I'm about to talk about. I'm sure you figured it out by now what my number 1 is. It's pretty obvious. Yes, it is the Nintendo Switch, and this is the best. This is the best console of all time. I won't say objective because people will lose it in the comments, but subjectively, for me, it's the best console of all time. Why is that, Paige? Why is it the best? Well, I'll tell you. Game selection, incredible. I have never seen a console have so many games on it of every single genre, like everything. It's not always about graphics here, because yeah, I realize the PS5, you know, the Xbox Series X, it's better in terms of, you know, graphics, but other than that, I mean, the Switch, it's got it all. It has everything. It has new games that are great, but it has so many ports, remasters, and then it's got the Nintendo Switch Online. So I can sit and play a Super Nintendo game that I loved. I know not everything's on there, but there's a decent selection. I mean, I just recently beat Earthbound on the Switch. That was a great experience for me. I love that. But there's lots of games on it from the Nintendo 64 and the Super Nintendo. So that's awesome. But then there's tons of ports and remasters of like PlayStation 1 games. That's been awesome for me because there are certain games I missed out on. Like, for example, Grandia. There's an HD remaster of that. And it's amazing. It's great. I never played it back on the PlayStation 1. So super exciting for me to play it on the Switch. That was fantastic. Some of my favorite games of all time are on the Switch. I mean, when I think about all the games I love, it's like Dragon Quest XI and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It's the best Mario Kart they've ever done. So yeah, it's amazing. It's my favorite Switch game of all time. Dragon Quest XI-S is one of my favorite JRPGs of all time. I mean, that game is phenomenal. Then you've got Final Fantasy 1 all the way up to 12 on there. I mean, it's amazing, and I have all of them. It's great. If I want to play Final Fantasy 5, I can play it on the Switch. If I want to play Final Fantasy 12, I can play it on the Switch. It's been remastered. It's been updated. It's been, you know, bettered in every way. It's such a great console. Now, I'm talking about game selection here because the Switch is amazing. I've never collected this many games for a console ever. I know some people have like 5,000 games. I mean, I've got a nice collection here. It's not 5,000, but it's pretty good, and I love my Switch collection. I mean, I've got games on there that are just, they're in the tops. I mean, I've got great platformers. Super Mario 3D World, Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I mean, those are already amazing, and some of them are ports, obviously, like from the Wii U or whatever, but then you've got great JRPGs. I mean, Crisis Core, that's awesome, and I realize it's on other consoles too, but you've got so many games on the Switch. But besides that, besides the great game selection, besides the fact that, you know, you can play Super Nintendo games and everything, it's the actual console itself. The fact that I can play on my TV and play handheld is amazing. It was one of the best things I'd ever seen. I can not only play it handheld like a normal handheld, but I can also put the screen down, have a normal controller, play it that way, and then I can play it on my TV. It's amazing. I simply can't go back. One thing, and I've shared this on Twitter, I don't think I've shared it on here before, but I run on the treadmill playing Switch because you can detach the controllers and play and run. So it's harder when you're doing this and you can't, it's too hard. I mean, I did it once. I played Dragon Quest VIII while I ran because I was just grinding, and that was kind of weird. I did it, but it was kind of odd. But now when I go running on the treadmill, my favorite thing to do is play a Switch game. And I take the controllers off. I got one in this hand, one in this hand. The Joy-Cons, I know there's drift, but besides that, then I put the screen down on my treadmill and I can run. I played Bayonetta on the treadmill. I played, Tales of Symphonia on the treadmill. Man, I've been playing so many games on the treadmill, and it's like a really great experience. I play Theater Rhythm all the time on the treadmill, and that is very strange, but I have figured it out, and it's very interesting. And the Switch just wins. It wins. It is the best console of all time. There is no other console that I have that I would be like, yeah, it's better, because you can do everything on the Switch, and the game selection is just mind-blowing. I mean, I've played weird games like AI the Somnium Files. Those are great, interesting murder mysteries. But then I've also played so many great JRPGs on the Switch, amazing platformers on the Switch, point-and-click games, visual novels. I mean, it goes on and on and on, and it's still super great. Like, there are so many Switch games that are coming out that I want, that I'm so excited for. And then there's Switch games that I own that I haven't played, and I'm super excited. I can't wait to play them. I just love the Switch, guys. I think it's truly Nintendo's finest work because it has everything on it. And the selection is beyond mind-blowing. When you think about how many, just one genre, how many JRPGs are on the Switch, it's insane. But then you're like, oh, are there platformers? Yeah, there's a ton. Like, more than the other ones, where you're like, the Super Nintendo was this amazing console with the golden age, that and the PS1 with all these great JRPGs, and you're like, yeah, it's great, but then it doesn't have as many, because back then we just weren't getting the amount of games that we get now, which is overwhelming sometimes. I mean, my God, there's just so many games I can't keep up, which is fun in a way. I mean, great. I'm glad we're getting so many. But man, the Switch, guys, it is the best. I love it to death. It is just a wonderful console. It's a reason why you should become a gamer, is because the Switch is just outstanding. So those are my top 5 consoles, guys. I'm really excited to share that with you because I had to think about it for a bit. And then there's a few consoles on here, over the years that I love, like the Nintendo 64. I have issues with that, and I don't think the Nintendo 64 is the best console by any means, but it's a huge part of my childhood. So sure, it's up there, nostalgia-wise, some great games there. The Game Boy Color, it was also honorable mention to that because, I just loved it so much. It was great. I have great memories with the PlayStation 2 as well. Come on. There are so many consoles over the past, 40 years and more that, to pick 5 is challenging, but at the same time, it's not. I know what my favorites are. I know the Switch is my favorite console of all time, but then I love, the Super Nintendo to death. I love the PS4, now the PS5, and then the 3DS and Vita are just incredible. So we have so many consoles out there. We are eating good, eating well as gamers, as they would say, because we have so many different consoles at our disposal now. We can play everything however we want. It's just great. It's a great time to be a gamer, and it's easy to go back and play some of these older consoles as well. What are your favorite consoles of all time? What is your favorite console of all time? Or, is there something I didn't mention? Like somebody might say the Xbox 360 is their favorite. I don't know. Whatever. What's your favorite? Let me know in the comments, and as always, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.